What is up, and welcome back to another episode of So There's That. I am your hostess, doing the mostest, Kevon She, and we are here to do a review for the Critics' Choice Award for Best Animated Motion Picture. Burr, 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 burr. I really should start just putting like horns in it, but I kind of like doing the whole burr, 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 burr thing. Maybe it's a millennial thing. I don't know. I love it. But anyways, first and foremost, before we get into the Critics' Choice Awards, congratulations to all the Golden Globe winners. It was a beautiful night. Actually, everybody looked really gorgeous. It really gave a whole like old Hollywood, old glam feel. And the mood in the room very much felt like more camaraderie than anything than a competition. So this was one of the first non-SAG awards that I've watched where it genuinely felt like everybody was there rooting for each other. There were a lot of first-time nominees who actually walked away as first-time winners. So that was really amazing to see. And honestly, I had a really good time watching it. The hostess did an amazing job. Nikki Glazer, I had never heard of her until then. Her 10-minute opening monologue was outstanding. So I need to do a deep dive on if she's like funny and other stuff too, or maybe I just really liked the punchiness and the time frame in which she had to deliver these jokes for this. But yeah, congratulations. A lot of those same people, those same films obviously are up for awards for the Critics' Choice Awards as well. And today we're going to focus on Best Animated Feature. So as a reminder, every Wednesday we're going to be talking about a different award show that's coming up, as well as a different category. One, just to kind of make sure I switch up the movies that I'm actually reviewing, so you're not hearing the same film review over and over and over, because obviously they're going to be getting nominated across multiple things. And another thing too, just because you were nominated in Golden Globes doesn't mean you're going to be nominated in Critics' Choice or the Oscars, so on and so forth. So just wanted to switch it up and just give you a little bit of variety so that you can put different films on your list, and that way you can hear my thoughts about other things besides what you already heard in the previous Wednesday film. So sorry, I'm going to be clearing my throat a little bit. Still on the other side of the flu, but you know, just a residual like cough, phlegm, stuff like that. It is that season. Just make sure y'all washing your hands, wear a mask if you're not feeling good, don't go to work, don't be getting other people sick. And with that, we are going to move into the Critics' Choice Awards for Best Animated Motion Picture. So, to qualify for the Critics' Choice Best Animated Feature Award, a film must be a primarily animated feature film with a significant portion of its runtime dedicated to animation, typically released within the eligible time frame, and must be submitted by the studio for consideration for Critics' Choice. Specific details regarding runtime and submission deadlines may vary depending upon the year. So, the biggest things with animation, while all art is subjective, if you remember with the Golden Globes, there was like specific like cast and crew, plot, theme, cohesion, all this other stuff that was underneath the umbrella of this was the overall best movie for best screenplay. And for animated feature, there's nothing necessarily specific except it must meet the audience expectations and take great risk. So there's no real cinematic measurement to really do anything, especially because there's multiple avenues in which you can produce an animated film. Something that you may not know, so in 2001, Shrek actually helmed the way that animated features are seen in award ceremonies, and this was one of the real big breakthrough moments where an animated movie was used to tell mature stories with complex characters and adult themes that was done in an unconventional way. So it was really about like being able to tell those jokes that kind of flew over kids' heads, but it was quirky enough for the kids to be able to quote it while being very mature enough for all of the adults to be able to consume it and have it be one of your favorite movies. Shrek 1 and Shrek 4 are literally some of my all-time favorite animated movies, and it makes sense that Shrek kind of just ushered in the way that we tell stories across animation. And it's not to say that it wasn't kind of being done like that before. Like, we already know, like with some Disney stuff and Pixar stuff, but DreamWorks, like, shout out to DreamWorks, really with the compelling stories and always finding a way to communicate with the adult audience as well as the kid audience and push a lot of mature themes and a lot of mature plots in a way that opens up a conversation not only amongst the, you know, the friend groups and the group chat, but when children have those questions as well, it helps you be able to tell this story in a way, this is going to be so annoying even to me, so I apologize to y'all, in a way that you can really get children to understand life lessons. So with this, I will say all of the films that I watched for the Critics' Choice for Best Animated Feature, it's really going to come down to how the film made the voters feel. Like, how did it make the majority of the voters feel? Every single one of them has something that is relevant, and all of them, with the exception of 2, have different animation styles. So you really can't compare like what they necessarily look like as a one-for-one because they're so dynamic and they're so different. So I'm really curious as to who's going to win, but Jesus Christ. Before I get into like my full like final thoughts, let's just go down the list of who's nominated, and then I'm going to give you my review, my thoughts and stuff like that on each of the films, and then we will close it out with who I think could take it, or at least rank who I would want to take it, and then if they didn't get it, who I would want to be next. So the nominees are Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Fowl, and The Wild Robot. So let's talk about Flow. So Flow is an hour and 25 minutes. It's about a cat who's a solitary animal, but as its home is devastated by a great flood, he finds refuge on a boat populated by various species and will have to team up with them despite their differences. So I knew this animation style was like a combination of things, so I had to look up a lot of different animation. While I know what I see, I really wanted to get the technical aspect of it all, so that you know like what you're looking at. So they used a combination of 3D animation, cell shaded animation, and realistic architecture. So 3D animation, so the environment is rendered using CGI and the camera moves through them like a handheld way. So if you look at a lot of the water, the leaves, everything like that, it looks like you can reach through the screen and touch it. And you know when you do perspective on video games where you're the character and you're like up close with the computer character that you're playing with. So a lot of it really felt like with the 3D animation that at a lot of the points I felt like I was out there with the animals documenting how they survived this flood, just in the way that the camera and the point of view and the perspective was done with the 3D animation. For the cell shaded animation, this comes with the animal's fur, and when you look at it, it looks like a bunch of pixels, and so their fur was abstracted to look like hand-drawn animation, giving them a humane-made warmth. The overall style is reminiscent of GameCube, Xbox, and the PS2 era. A lot of y'all probably don't. A lot of y'all my listeners, y'all know, okay? Y'all know about these game systems. Don't even get me started. I could do a whole like 2-hour episode on the evolution of video games and game systems, but I digressed. With a retro 6th generation console aesthetic. So You see their fur, but it really looks like a bunch of squares put together, like something Picasso would do. And when they shake and their fur and stuff, it doesn't lift up like individual strands, and their fur is not necessarily blowing in the leaves. So they stand out so much against the environment and the backdrop of it all that it does feel game like, and kind of like on the revolutionary side of going into the 2000s of what video games started to look like for you to be able to fully immerse yourself. So it's almost like when VR first started really coming out and getting really good. And then the realistic architecture of it all. The animals are designed to reflect their real world counterparts in proportions, character design, expression, and movement. So while they look fake and hand drawn, they're drawn to scale. You don't have a lot of the over exaggerated eyes or nose or mouth that you are typically used to this day and age with just regular digital animation. It doesn't look cartoony. Like while you're watching an animation, these are realistically drawn animals to scale. So all of it was, like I said, it was almost like a documentary style in the way that you were going with it. Another thing with Flow that is so unique against all the other films in this category is that this is non-speaking at all. So all of the environmental sounds, all of the animal sounds, this movie literally helms on the backs of your sound designer, your music supervisor, and whoever does the musical score and the composition. Sometimes it's different people, but it really comes into play with sound to make this an immersive experience. So while I was sitting in the theater watching it with everybody, you still were able to follow a very compelling story about what animals go through when the earth is in peril, when the earth is cleansing itself. It really gave like Noah's Ark, but there was no Noah and other humans. It was literally the animals looking at the universe and feeling a shift in the air, a shift in the environment, and trying to communicate across different species that were both prey and predator to one another. And it was about moving forward in survival and being able to get over your own fears in order to get to the other side of what this looks like and make their lives in the ecosystem a better place. So to have this without Timmy, come on, and all this other stuff, it really drew you into what animals experience without the help of human interference. You have a cat who, domesticated cats aren't as adept in the water as they could be. But what does adaptability look like when you have no choice? When it's literally you're going to die if you do not adapt. What does it look like when the animal that is known to stalk you is now at risk of dying and you're fighting your natural instincts to run away? And so while it was more so realistic on the animals and how they interact with one another, you still had your movie moments where, you know, they were being themselves, but in a way that was still very much like a cartoon. So like one scene where the dog is trying to play fetch and the bird is just not, he throws it and then the dog brings it back. And so then the bird like tosses it in a way so that they can be done playing with the dog. And so you still get this communication that's still very much animated and very much make-believe, but very close to some of the stories that you've seen when, you know, this monkey raised a stray cheetah or something like that. They find a way to figure it out. And this entire film is about figuring it out. And because it's non-speaking and because you have the realistic animal sounds, every time they were in danger, your heart was just stopped and you are just on the edge of your seat and just holding your breath and just praying that they would make it through. And it really forces you to think about, again, as human beings, it forces you to think about your footprint on the environment and how much damage you not only do to the forests and the trees and making all these buildings and stuff like that, but what do you do to the animals who are displaced because of this? So really love the message of this film so much. And shout out to them. They won Golden Globe Best Animated Motion Picture as well. It's the first time Latvia was on the Golden Globe stage. So it's a big deal. A lot of people were looking at it, and a lot of the commentary on the internet, what is that and what is this, and I've never heard of this, that, and the third. Go to your indie film centers. Go to those film centers that support independent films, because this is where a lot of those films that you're like, I never heard of this, are in these conversations at these major awards, and you will definitely understand why they deserve a seat at the table. And Flow is no exception to that. They absolutely deserve being here, nominated for Critics' Choice for Best Animated Feature. Moving on to the biggest box office film of 2024, Inside Out 2. So Inside Out 2 is a sequel that features Riley entering puberty and experiencing brand new, more complex emotions as a result. As Riley tries to adapt to her teenage years, her old emotions try to adapt to the possibility of being replaced. So Inside Out 2 was 100% computer animated, and computer animation delivers complex, life-changing situations in a way that's palatable and therapeutic for kids and adults, healing and hilarious and funny. So they use the computer-generated stuff that we're used to seeing in movies like a Shrek, in movies like Tangled, in movies like Moana, to put together the story and really exaggerate the features. Why this animation style works for a movie like this is because we're dealing with emotions, and we're dealing with the emotions of somebody who's entering puberty. You're trying to find your identity, you're trying to find your sense of self, you're dealing with a change of friend groups, and everything in you from like age 11 to honestly like 24, it does not go away, man. This is a really long time of being frustrated with yourself and constantly asking yourself, why can't I be normal? Constantly trying to figure out why you feel a certain way. You can't put your finger on it. Especially as a young woman who's coming up with not only the regular hormonal changes just with bone growth and everything like that, but then with the coming of your menstrual cycle. Boys go through hormonal changes too. The acne and the voice changes and the teasing and the teeth and everything is setting. Your feet are too big for your body. Your limbs are just so long, and you're going from this state of being in 5th grade and everybody's your best friend and you're so cool to now entering a stage of middle school, which is freaking hell week for 3 years. In 7th grade, the worst. And you're going through this and you're just trying to figure out your identity, and you don't want to be seen as a little kid with the barrettes and stuff anymore. You want to feel grown and you want to feel more mature, but you don't know what that looks like. So in Inside Out 2, enter new emotions, anxiety, which is my favorite, nostalgia, which is very cute in her pop-ups. You have ennui, which is French for boredom. You have embarrassed, and these are all the emotions that you don't think about when you're a kid, and you laugh and spaghetti comes out of your nose, or you dig in your nose and you wipe a booger on your shirt, or you trip and fall and stuff like that. You don't think about that until you're finally in 6th grade, and it's like, oh, you're still wearing that? Your shoes still light up? You still have barrettes in your head? And now all these things that you never had to worry about are bombarding you at one time. So you get this in Inside Out 2, to where the first movie, we are dealing with just the concept of imagining yourself as an adult and explaining to your child when they're getting upset that think of your feelings as having an emotional control panel. And sometimes there's an emotion that is leading this control panel, but you cannot neglect the other emotions, and you have to allow space to let these emotions help the one that's leading it, because you need all of them to survive. Then we get anxiety and we get all these other emotions, which are good. And the whole premise is you can't just be happy all the time. One emotion doesn't run you. It takes everything that you feel to create an entire person. And when you can accept that all of these feelings create you, then you can accept yourself and love yourself and lean into some of the things that you feel, which will force you to face and pinpoint exactly what's going on in your life. And it allows you to get through your feelings much faster than avoiding them, which ends up turning into expensive mental health and psychiatry bills when you become an adult. So it's no reason that, like, it's no surprise that this movie made so much money at the box office, because it explains you at the most basic levels. And for me, I just said at work today, if you can explain and get a child to understand something, if you can effectively communicate with a child, you can effectively communicate with anyone. One, they take everything literally. So it forces you to use your vocabulary and really reach into matching your words with what you're trying to convey. Then children are constant seekers of information. So it's always why. So as an adult, you need to be able to answer those questions. But once you can get a child to be like, oh, okay, you literally have elevated in your level of communication. So I feel like Inside Out 2, especially Inside Out 2 with the feelings that are typically seen as negative, like anxiety and embarrassment, it allows you to be able to communicate to a child and say, it is okay to worry. It is okay that you are embarrassed by this. Let's talk through why you feel this way and understand that you will feel this way again. But let's work on these things so that as it comes, that feeling is lesser and lesser. So as an adult, you become a better parent, you become a better partner, you become a better friend, and you can raise children. And by raise, I don't mean just your own, because it takes a village. So anybody who's coming into contact with children, it allows you to be able to communicate in a way where you're more calm and you can practice more patience into helping them become adults. Because at the end of the day, kids are just people trying to figure it out, and you can't allow your frustrations as an adult to cuss them out or be angry at them or yell at them or berate them when they literally are looking to you to figure it out. They don't have the answers. And so that's literally what Inside Out 2 is about, and it deserves all of its accolades. Next, we have Memoir of a Snail. So Memoir of a Snail is the only R-rated animated feature in this category. Like most things, I went into this blind. Honestly, at this point, I can't even say most. I will say all of them. Even my other TV show recaps and reviews and stuff like that, I don't look up the premise. I really don't want to read other people's thoughts and ideas of what the show is about, because I like to go in with my own thoughts and my own feelings, and I want everything to be unbiased. So of course I was like, Memoir of a Snail, like, what is that? But it's about a bittersweet memoir of a melancholic woman called Grace Pudel. She's a hoarder of snails, romance novels, and guinea pigs. So this one was stop motion or claymation. So think A Nightmare Before Christmas, Tim Burton style things, Gumby, Thomas the Train, all of that. So that's where we are with this. So it's handmade. So the film is a tactile experience because everything is made by hand. It used minimal materials. So in this, Elliot decided to keep the materials minimum and celebrated the brush strokes and fingerprints in the clay to give more depth in the face and give more power to the facial expressions that could potentially be washed away if you smooth everything out. They used complex puppetry, so they had complicated armatures inside of them, and many of the lead characters in this had tray replacements, plasticine mouths. they had magnetic eyeballs. And the pupils were tiny magnets too. So to be able to do like the blinking stuff, even though it was very like dunk, 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 like stop motion, because it was magnetized, it gave that rebound effect of what your normal eye blinks do. And I thought that was a really good touch. And the arms on the puppets were silicone. So this movie is a fictionalized memoir based on like semi-autobiographical stories of people in Adam Elliott's life. And Adam Elliott is the director. Now, I'm going to be real. I'm going to just describe this film in like 4 acts. Act 1. What the hell am I watching? Act 2. Oh, this is really sweet. It's kind of cute. Act 3. Oh my God. Oh my God. Like, it cannot get any worse. Like, oh my God. And then Act 4 was like, okay, I think we can get some peace. And then like Act 4 wrecks you on the way out. What an emotional journey to go through a film like this through a hobby such as snail collecting. And one of the things, I actually learned so much about snails in this. And the biggest thing about this film that I can say without giving away everything that's in it is that snails, I learned, never retrace their paths. And a lot of times in life, a lot of people get stuck when they're unable to accept their lives, or when they have a lot of regrets and they don't ever really do the work to... You can't undo anything that you've done. And I say this all the time. We are all heroes to somebody, and we are all absolutely villains to somebody else. And a lot of times we don't like to know that we've been villains. So you get those people that your ex coming back 10 years later talking about, oh, I'm sorry, and I did this and the third, and I should have respected you more, and all this other stuff. Or old friends and things of that nature. While it may seem good in theory, or feeling like even on the receiving end of like, if they just apologize to me, I can move on. That don't be happening. And it's also not realistic. You, as someone who was a perpetrator of someone else's pain, sometimes doubling back in your own journey to healing and discovering that you were a piece of shit once upon a time can be very traumatic and have PTSD results to the person that you're trying to apologize to. So it ends up doing more harm than good, all because you're trying to absolve yourself of your own guilt. And then the person on the receiving end, if you get stuck in that, you may get stuck wanting an apology from somebody who never even realized that they need to apologize in the first place. Or there are narcissists, or they think you did them wrong. And so the idea in knowing that a snail never retraces its path forces you to watch this movie with the understanding of there are no do-overs. All you can do is recognize the things within yourself to change and to really absorb and tell yourself, I was a piece of shit, and also I was really good. And all of those things and everything in between makes me human. But I cannot undo what has been done, whether it was good or bad. But if I want to leave my mark on this world as somebody who is remembered as kind to most people, then I need to move forward. I need to have my own internal and external metamorphosis as I continue to live my life and shape it in the way that I see and that I can be proud of when it is my time to go. And so to wrap all of that up in a bow in just a snail, I just thought that was so mind-blowing. And I'm not even gonna hold you. This movie wrecked me. This movie wrecked me. And it was so unexpected. But I just love movies. Like, a lot of people see my face and they'll see like RBF and they're just like, oh, let me stay away from her. Da, da, da. But kindness is so important to me. I don't believe in being nice. I feel like being nice always has a motive. That motive can be negative, that motive can be good. you know, I lied to you so that I could spare you the truth, or I told you this because I wanted to give you a win. Well, I was just being nice because I didn't want to hurt your feelings. When you're thinking about it in your head, you're thinking that you're doing a good thing, but ultimately sometimes being nice can be bad for the person that you call yourself being nice to. Versus being kind, kindness is a character trait. Kindness is being able to be honest with someone and be open with someone and be vulnerable enough to know that what you're going to say may hurt their feelings, but in the long run, it is the best thing for them to receive. Has nothing to do with you, has nothing to do with absolving you or making yourself feel good or giving yourself a pat on the back because you did a good deed today. And so this movie is about kindness. And again, I enjoy kindness. I enjoy kind people. And sometimes kindness hurts temporarily. But the long run of it all is that it's going to be beneficial to everybody else. And so this movie was just about kindness. And more importantly, just being kind to yourself and having grace for yourself and this journey, and recognizing that you're going to fuck up, and so is everybody else. So don't think about what people may think of you, because the same thoughts that they have about you, I promise you they're having them about themselves, and they're trying to figure it out too. So just focus on you, keep moving forward, and move forward in a way that makes you proud of who you become. With that, we have Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Fowl. So this one actually didn't have a theatrical release, and it's the only other film in here that is similar to animation style as another film. So Wallace and Gromit is claymation as well. So the premise of this is Gromit's concerned that Wallace has become ever dependent on his inventions. Sounds like 2024, which proves justified when Wallace invents a smart gnome that seems to develop a mind of its own. So biggest thing that stands out to me is the composition and the scoring of this movie. Y'all remember waking up and watching cartoons on like Hanna-Barbera, especially the cartoons that didn't have dialogue, where the pets and the animals did not speak. You knew what was going on because of the woo and you knew what was going on just based off what was happening in your head. So you knew somebody got hit in the head. You knew somebody was falling from the sky. You knew somebody got hit with an Acme anvil. You knew that there was a chase going on. You knew that something mysterious was happening. I love this film so much because I could close my eyes and know everything that was happening in the film. Especially because one of the characters, the dog, did not have a mouth. So he's non-speaking while everybody else is speaking. And so it really gives that 90s feel, that 80s feel cartoon, very, very much rooted in the cartoons of Hanna-Barbera, of One Saturday Morning, a little bit of Toonami. Toonami kind of started going away and giving you more of that 3D animation, but really giving you that Thomas the Train, that Gumby. I'm not gonna say all the other cartoons, I'm old. But I really loved that it felt like something that I could sit with a child and really enjoy with them and laugh at all of the other parts. I also think that they did a really good job for a story that is 35, almost 36 years old. The original story of Wallace and Gromit came out in 1989. I really do enjoy that they were able to incorporate something that's so modern as far as like being so tech dependent into a style that is still very old. The tech is a gnome. But like, who has gnomes, right? So you're looking at it and it reminds you of like your granny house or your aunt's house, that quirky aunt that has a lot of garden gnomes, has a lot of brooches, has a lot of teacups and china and stuff like that. But it's like a gnome, but like the Alexa version, or Smart House, if you remember that from Disney. So it combines those elements that still makes the technology of it all very practical. It makes it look like new inventions. Some of the things like, you know, cranking the arm out on like one of those little, they look like X's or whatever, and you could crank it out and then you grab something and you pull it back in. Those are some of the first inventions. So even in this movie, there were a lot of nods to when technology first started taking over, and then you're including a smart gnome. So I thought it was really good to kind of just bridge the gap of generational technological advances in something that still felt like a hug. It felt like coming home to something that you could cuddle up with in front of the fireplace. So I liked it a lot. Also with this film, this is the first, it's been 20 years since the last release of the Wallace and Gromit in 2004. So just knowing like the back and forth and, you know, making sure that the studios were behind them, and finally being able to come out 20 years later and stay true to themselves, stay true to their animation, and stay true to the thread of what their story is, while also bringing you something that was fresh to the Wallace and Gromit universe in a way, I thought was really nice. And shout out to filmmakers and everybody that works together to tell a story. Sometimes, you know, some of the most compelling stories and the things that are so moving, it takes time. And you came out with it, and it takes a lot of starting and stopping, a lot of no's before you get those people to come behind you and give you a chance and say yes. So shout out to Netflix, because this was a Netflix release. Shout out to Netflix for creating money in their budget to move this forward after all of the no's that the production team and the writer experienced along the way for the last 20 years. So shout out to them. And last we have the Wild Robot. So this was combination animation style. I need to eat. The Celsius is taking over, and I just felt really dizzy because I'm hungry. Okay. After a shipwreck, an intelligent robot called Roz is stranded on an uninhabited island. To survive the harsh environment, Roz bonds with the island's animals and cares for an orphaned baby goose. So this is a combination of hand-painted, motion capture, impressionistic, and 2D and 3D animation. And in fact, I believe Lupita just won an award, and the Wild Robot won an award. I cannot remember the award ceremony in which they won. I apologize. But they won because of the combination with motion capture and the other animation styles. So before I go into what they mean, basically what they decided to do is Lupita plays Roz, the robot. The robot, while animated, is all motion capture, movement, emotions, facial expressions, everything with Lupita thrust into the world of the animation. And to really get these robotic movements and really get the depth of emotion, I thought that it was a really cool idea to do this in this way. A lot of times you get motion capture, think of Avatar. So it's set in a world of CGI, but the CGI is real. And CGI is a form of animation. But when you think about Avatar and you think about other motion capture, you think about Mufasa, you think The Little Mermaid, right? It's kind of infused in a way where all of the characters aren't necessarily animated. So for this to be a fully animated film with the robot being captured via motion capture, it was really cool and a very unique concept. So as far as the hand painting goes, every character and surface in the film is hand painted except for Roz. As she progresses through the film, her surface is replaced with brushstrokes to show all the wear and tear, getting dented, the battle scenes and stuff like that. So they did have to put some of that in there for the contrast and just artistic imagery. The impressionistic look is from the director Chris Sanders' desire to translate the original artistic design from the concept to the final look. And painterly, they use an almost painter style for the forest and the critters. So it's kind of similar to Flow, except not as obviously not animal fur. So you still got to see a little bit of the fur. Maybe it didn't move in the wind all the time the way that it could have, but it wasn't as abstract in the way that Flow was. And then combining 3D technology with traditional 2D animation for a lot of the other forest animals. So this film, it has a lot of cute moments, and you know, we've had movies I think before just about like other animals and stuff being adopted by other people. I mean, hello, Bambi. You got the story of the Jungle Book, Mowgli. You have George of the Jungle. So we've had animated stories about a different species kind of coming into the fold and getting adopted, and the forest animals coming together and all these other things. But I would say the true heart of the Wild Robot is more so believing that you yourself are capable of loving and capable of being loved for who you are. I really deeply connected with Roz. I've been told before that I am an android amongst humans. How I express love is not in a way that is obvious, nor is obviously soft. You would really have to know me and be in my inner circle and be in like the bosom of the way that I love to understand that my love language and everything that I do and everything that I say and how I say it is an extension of how deeply I love you. As somebody who's really big on words and words meaning things, what I say to you, and more importantly, how I say things to you, if you just listen and you pay attention, you will absolutely know how much I love you and how much I'm going to ride for you. But I personally struggled with feeling like something was wrong with me and that I wouldn't be loved, or that I wouldn't find a partner, or that I would be single for the rest of my life. And it kind of translated into feeling like I was only good enough to be used as a means to an end. And when people were done using me for whatever it was that they wanted from me, they would move on, and everything that they learned from me, they would give it to somebody else and never give it back to me. And I know, super vulnerable, but in this robot, in her being an actual robot and being told that you are incapable of love, you are incapable of people attaching themselves to you, you are incapable of actually caring for and attaching to other people. Nothing about you is warm, everything about you is cold, and that is who you are always meant to be. It really resonated with me. And if you're somebody who feels this way or have ever felt that way, you will watch this movie and you will truly be pulled into the story of Roz and the story of self-doubt and just learning and loving yourself and being like, okay, I am like this, but people can love me this way. And the people that are supposed to love me that way will be in my life, and they will love me, and they will uplift me, and they won't try to change me or make me try to adapt to what they think I should be in order to fit in. I will stand out, and because I stand out, I'm going to be loved for that. And so just the story of it all, and with all of the stories for all of the films, like I said at the beginning, it's really going to be about how you feel as you watched it and as you voted for it. And that you're just gonna have to catch a voter on whatever day that they're feeling to really say this film is going to win. So there's that on all of the films nominated for Critics' Choice Award for Best Animated Feature. Again, I just talked a lot, so let me just go over them. Once More, Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Fowl, and The Wild Robot. Now, I'm a big softie, so they all got 10s for me. Like, I just felt like I couldn't choose because I just felt so differently between all of them. And I love all of them. All of them have excellent rewatch value. And the one that I didn't think would have rewatch value literally brought it home at the end. Like, when I watched Memoir of a Snail, at one point I was like, oh, so this is gonna be like Precious or For Colored Girls, where like I'm gonna watch it and it's powerful, but I'll never watch this again because it's too much. And they really brought it all together to where it's like, no, I have to watch this again. Like, I have to come back in here and I have to feel this emotion because it makes the ending that much more satisfying to watch. So with that being said, I'll just kind of go through each of them and just talk about who I think I'm gonna rank them of like most likely that I think would win to the least likely would win. So we'll start with the least likely. The one I think that is least likely to win is Wallace and Gromit, and that's because I think out of all of the creative risks that were taken with all of the films, I think that they played it the safest. Not necessarily saying that is a bad thing, but looking at the dynamics of every other film and how deep they were willing to go with making the audience feel, I just think that it was a little bit safe. And so I think it's the least likely to win. So that one is going to be ranked number 5 to me. I think there's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's ranked number 5. Number 4. Okay, this is hard. I was on the phone with my fiance for like 20 minutes struggling, and she was like, you gotta choose. And it is tough. Okay. Number 4. I don't want to say. Okay. Number 4. Y'all are gonna kill me. Okay. Number 4. Yikes. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna say number 4. I hate this. Why did I decide to do this? Y'all don't know, man. I think I still can't do it. Number 4. Okay. Okay. Oh. Okay. Number 4, I'm gonna say is Memoir of a Snail. Now, this is going against personal bias. Personally, I would put personal bias, I would put Memoir of a Snail in my top 2. Like, I would be that person online, oh my god, all of these other movies suck, they deserve so much more, blah, blah, blah. But as a voter, I would put Memoir of a Snail 4th. And I'm gonna tell you right now, the top 4, it's so hard. Any of them could win and walk away, I would be so happy. I cried on every single one of them, like literally crying. And but I would say it's number 4 because there are so many things. If you've seen For Colored Girls and Precious, boy, it was just not a good time. Like, it was just not a good time. Like, nobody was having a good day. You were like, oh my god, you're just like, you walked away and were like, wow, I need to go to therapy. I think so. I would put this as number 4 because I think that there were so many themes in so many series of unfortunate events explored in such a short amount of time in a movie like this, that it would be overwhelming. And I think that because it's overwhelming, it could turn a voter off. I think if they would have stuck with 3 or 4 things that happened, it still would have had the same impact. But it was like 8 things. And I know he wanted to include, Adam Elliott wanted to include a lot of different experiences from people in his real life, but I think that we could have scaled back on some, or maybe combined some, so that it didn't feel like such a barrage of trauma. So that's the reason, as a voter, I would say like it ranks number 4. Number 3. Oh, yikes. Who do I have left? Okay. Number 3, I would say the Wow Robot. And I would say the Wow Robot is definitely in top 3 because of compelling story. I mean, I literally just gagged over it in my description of the movie. But I feel that the Wow Robot might fall a little bit into the comparisons of what is that movie? I was going to say James and the Giant Peach. The Iron Giant. I feel like it may get compared accidentally, and I think that it might fall into voter bias, unfortunately. I know I just said, me being unbiased, I would rank Memoir of a Snail 4th, but I think that Wow Robot is very compelling. The combination of animation styles is absolutely genius. The storyline is really good, and it managed to do something that is tough, where to me, I think the only film that really does an expert job of this is Avatar: Way of the Water. Avatar was such a long ass movie, but it felt like 2 movies. So you didn't feel like you were sitting there the whole time. So with the Wow Robot, it felt like I went through such a journey that I watched 2 movies in one, and I still walked away feeling fulfilled. But I just think that with the other 2 films that are left over, I think that it may fall into like well, did we see this before type of thing. And while the Iron Giant was all 2D and hand painting, the Iron Giant is a very, very compelling story. And so I just wonder if it would get kind of lost in the memory and the nostalgia of people who remember that movie. Top 2. Okay. Number 2. I think that number 2 would be Inside Out 2. This was not an easy decision to come to. I mean, y'all already saw I was stuck on number 4 because I was literally racking them all in my brain. Inside Out 2, while it made a lot of money, box office sales doesn't always necessarily mean that the story was the most compelling. Don't get me wrong, this story is very compelling. Very gut-wrenching and heartwarming. But I think that Inside Out 2 is its own enemy. Seems harsh, but it works against itself in a way that it didn't stray too far from the first movie. And I think what would have made this number 1 for me is if they do an Inside Out 3, I absolutely think they're going to take it. Because I think in Inside Out 3, they will do this thing. The movie is set up for them to do it. But I think if there was a little bit more time, and an hour and a half, I get it, I understand. But I think they set themselves up though. I think that what would have really made this movie different than the first movie is not only the introduction of the new emotions within Riley, but introducing the new emotions of how the parents handled her changes. And now we know she has emotionally, stable parents, but just because you're emotionally stable, anytime an outside stimulant is introduced, your body and your brain is starting all over again until you regulate. So it would have been really nice to see the parents be off balance, and then we kind of come together at the end, because parents go through hell when their kids go through puberty, but hers were like, okay, we got it, and we knew this was coming. I'll say, okay, all right. But they could have leaned into the parents also struggling with not having the answers for their child, not being there for them. They're crying in their room and you have no idea what to do. You think you're going to give them their favorite food, but their favorite food yesterday ain't the favorite food today. They yelling at you, they screaming, they don't talk to you, they shut you out. And I think if they would have leaned into that, it wouldn't have been so close to the storyline of part 1, and it would have really blew them out of the water. Now, do I think they set themselves up for an Inside Out 3? Yes, because now we know she's going through puberty. We all know what puberty feels like. Let's see it from a parent's point of view, because I think it'll be a really good opportunity for the movie to be catered to parents while also allowing teenagers to see through their parents' own emotions how their parents feel about not being close to their children anymore, to start feeling that separation anxiety and that empty nest syndrome when your baby is not a baby anymore. I think it'll spark a really deep conversation between teenagers and parents if Inside Out 3 decides to lean into the parents' emotions. I think that would be very genius. If y'all do that, you heard it here first. And obviously, number 1, I think Flo is gonna take it. It's so unique. It is so immersive. Like, I literally felt like I was in a 4D theater up in Universal Studios. I just felt involved and panicked and scared and happy and satisfied. I felt cold. I felt warmth. I felt the sun. There was just no getting out of this movie until the credits rolled. You were just thrust into this world, and it really shows you that emotions are universal. It shows you that I may speak English, you may speak French, you may speak Arabic, you may speak Chinese, you may speak what is it, Igbo? I don't know how to pronounce it. You may be from Egypt, you may be from Somalia, you may be from Ghana, Kenya, your own local dialects within the larger part of your language. It really shows you that even when we can't speak the same, our feelings is what bring us together and what unite us. And if we can focus on what makes us similar, we can actually win this thing called life and make a better world for ourselves now and everybody beyond us. And with the state of the world right now, this was the perfect message. I mean, this movie was from a Latvian production company. I don't know what they speak. I don't speak that language, and yet they were able to produce something that says it does not matter what language you speak, and doing it with the absence of humans and seeing it through the innocence of people of animals who cannot help themselves, of animals who are, if they can forego and get through their basic needs of killing each other and realizing that the predator can work with the prey, then we as humans who are more advanced should be able to do the same thing. So that is gonna wrap up the Critics' Choice Award Best Animated Feature nominees. I'm, again, still excited. Huge congratulations. It's already a win for everybody that's nominated. I am so excited for the winner. Honestly, I think the only other category and award show that I'm most excited for, and it's really neck and neck, this one is an Best Horror Film for the Saturn Awards. They're like neck and neck, and it's because this is the first time I think so many animated films just move me. I have not been this moved since Mulan and The Prince of Egypt and the original Lion King. But those weren't necessarily coming out like back to back to back to back to back. To sit and watch all of these films in the same year, and then me doing, you know, my job, my researchicals, I'm watching them like on this day and then the next day and then a couple of days later. I was just getting hit in the chest like, oh my God. Especially going into it being like, okay, I'm watching a little cartoon. And next thing I know, I'm like, oh my God, like I need to do better with my life. And it's just so much we can do. And how do I save the planet? Like I'm about to be damn near like a tree hugger and have a side quest as being an environmentalist and agriculturalist, because how can I save the planet? And all of these movies made me feel this way in some way, shape, or form. And I think human movies, it takes a lot for humans to receive this message from other humans, because I think they watch it through a lens of bitterness, maybe watch it through a lens of privilege, socioeconomic status, and stuff like that. And so you may watch something that you may aspire to, but depending on where you are in your life, you may be upset or angry or unable to absorb it because you feel that that lifestyle does not apply to you. And it's why I love animation so much, because it's such imaginary and it's so make-believe. The real message gets to kind of go through you through osmosis because you don't have any barriers up. And that's what makes animated films amazing. It's very, you would have to be a really bad animated film for me to be like, oh, you're not a 10 out of 10. But these ones, I literally sat and was like, okay, are any of them, like, if I could think and say, what would make this movie better? Every time I sat and thought, the better that I thought about was basically extra credit. Like, they are perfect. They're not near perfect. They are perfect films, and they are out there for somebody. I think everybody can glean a message from each and every one of these. But the best part is, for each movie, there's an audience out there that it's going to hit for, like nail on the head. And I don't know, I just love it so much. So I hope this review made you want to go and catch some of these. A lot of these are on streaming platforms. I know Flow, I watched Flow in the movies, but I think it's coming to Prime. Memoir of a Snail is available to rent or buy on Prime Video. Wallace and Gromit is on Netflix. The Wild Robot should be coming to Prime soon. There are theaters that are still showing it in there as well. And Inside Out 2 has been on Disney for like forever. So all of them are available. I highly encourage you to go watch them. You can watch them by yourself, watch them with other adult friends, watch them with kids, watch them with teenagers, get them off their phones, and just have a good time. And don't forget to tune into the Critics' Choice Award, which will be airing exclusively on E! January 12th from 7 to 10 Eastern Standard Time, and it will be available to stream the next day on Peacock. And with that, I will catch y'all in the next one.